All right. Mic check 1 2 1 2. See if anybody can hear me out there. See if anybody can hear me. Can actually press one in the chat. Information man show. What's going on, bro? If you want to get on the panel, man, I'd like to have you on the panel. That would be dope. Black Cyber Network. Peace. Christian, what's going on? All right, so you can hear me. You can hear me. Dope. Yeah, wanted to have this hangout, man. We were talking about this for quite some time, but we never really got a chance to get around to it. We want to make sure we squeeze out as much content as possible before August 1st when Hangouts goes away and we have no other means of really having these panels on YouTube anymore. So we got to make sure we put out as much content as possible for that the next 30 to 31 days um, before the axe is swung, right? The guillotine is dropped on us. So having having this discussion, man, meant that we we've been talking about this for like maybe quite a few months. I talked about this with Black Gnostic Speaks. Shout out to BGS. Um, we talked about this maybe about a week or so ago, or I think 2 weeks ago, on Geopolitics Hangout, but kind of put more emphasis behind it now. Um, where how do you? I mean, we blame public education for the failures of Black youth today, right? Zennials, millennials, Generation X, and we really never had an alternative solution. So, what would be the alternative here? And homeschooling was one thing, but Montessori schools were another, right? Um, Montessori school is something I never attended. Admittedly, I never attended a Montessori school, but homeschooling Caribbean people, African people are always used to homeschooling their people. So I was used to seeing something like this. Um, if you go back to slavery, slavery where slaves did not have access to the same level of education as their slave masters' offspring did, and the black slaves used to use the church, the black church, whether it was in some kind of shack or some kind of organized institution. They used to use that for education. Now they don't do that anymore, at least to my knowledge. They don't use it as much. They tend to use the church for other purposes, non academic. Whereas Catholic schools, they're pretty much in your face that their Catholicism and their institution is meant for learning. So how do Black people really capitalize off of something like that and really have immediate social impact for themselves? So that's why we wanted to have this hangout. I don't know if Dr. Phoenix or um, Complex Design is going to join us. I don't know when they're going to join us, if they are going to join us. I know both of them are pretty busy. We did have a interesting hangout over at Reg the Bad Guy. Shout out to Reg the Bad Guy, and go check out his channel for our interview over there today. Um, really dope hangout we had over there. Joe Black was going on. Um, So yeah, that's why we decided to launch this hangout. So I'll give people a couple minutes to kind of trickle in before we get started because don't want to get started without some of the panelists who are supposed to be here. Mm. Mr. Paul Bryant, how are you doing?
Morning, bro. How are you?
I'm good yourself, man.
I'm good. I'm good. Enjoying the heat wave that's having the Europeans melting.
I've heard about that, man. I've heard about it, man. People overcrowding at swimming pools and all these other places, man. People having heat strokes out there.
Dude, I just they're like, oh my God, it's 90. We're melting. I'm like, really?
Mhm.
Go to New York. It's 90 every damn day. But it is continental Europe, so you already know. You already know how that goes.
Mhm. How are you surviving?
Fine. I mean, dude, I was born in July.
Mhm.
I'm a summer baby. Plus, born and raised in New York City. 90? It's nothing to me.
Mhm.
You know? Fine.
Mhm. But the ring must be pretty lit. Mhm.
Funny you say that. I actually haven't. I actually didn't go all week. Haven't been since. Actually, haven't been in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Actually, haven't been in 2 weeks. Been doing a few other things.
Mhm.
Probably gonna go. What's tomorrow? Monday?
Mhm.
If not tomorrow, Tuesday.
Mhm.
There are a few events coming up too. So
Mhm. All right. Paul Bryant, how much do you know about Montessori schools?
funny you say that. I sent my baby girl to a Montessori school.
All right. Could you explain in a nutshell what a Montessori school is?
Okay, Montessori school, and don't quote me as to her name, but she was a teacher. Her name was Montessori,
Dr.
and
Montessori.
correct. And in a nutshell, her premise was she wanted to challenge the accepted Western notion of what a child can be taught at a given age.
Mhm.
She also wanted to challenge the accepted methods for teaching at a given age. So her mindset was, as opposed to the traditional structure, let children from a very young age see what they gravitate towards, and then build and work off of that as a way to begin to then structure your teaching day, for lack of a better term. So I like that method. I took my daughter to a Montessori school. She was three and a half at that time. So the principal of that school, as I was talking to her and my first wife, so my daughter was playing with a certain toy. So there was some toys laid out, and so the principal, after about 15, 20 minutes, he said, "Well, I noticed your daughter gravitated toward that particular puzzle, and she put it together. So he says, so that tells me, based on the Montessori method, certain areas that she would naturally gravitate to, that she should have a proclivity towards certain parts of what's now in 2019 called STEM. So science and mathematics turned out to be two of my daughter's best, my strongest subjects. So flash forward after my daughter left that Montessori school, I sent her to another private school because every Montessori school is also private. And the principal of that school, at the introductory meeting, she tells you that when when she came to this country from the West Indies, her mindset was after working in the New York City Board of Ed, coming to America, I should say, coming to America. Her mindset was she wanted to challenge what a child can be taught at a given age. So her mindset was every child should be reading by pre-K. By kindergarten, every child should be reading proficient, reading and writing. The traditional method in America is no. The children should begin reading in kindergarten and first grade. So to get your child into that school that my daughter went to, even though it's a private school, she had a entrance exam. So if your child is not reading by kindergarten, you could not get in.
Mhm.
So it was that principal of that second private school. She was the one who also put the bug in my head about, well, you should consider sending your daughter to one of the Manhattan prep schools when she leaves this school, which was after like fifth or sixth grade at that time. And my initial hesitance was, well, my mom did that. She sent me to white schools in a white neighborhood, and you know the nature and the environment of America. And I don't know if I want to throw my daughter to the wolves. And she said, listen, understand something. How we may or may not feel about America and the system and how everything works, you absolutely want your child to have the best start possible. So the wealthiest families and the captains of industry, they want their children around other other black students and other black children because they only want them around the best. Um, those 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 black students who are also going to be the best and the brightest. So you want your daughter to be one of those best and brightest. So that's where you get your Kenneth Cheneau and your Reggie Lewis and your Dick Parsons. That's who those people are. That's where they come from. Your Robert Smith. Okay, so that's that's the role that you should think about for your daughter. And she put that bug in my ear. She put that bug in my head. I pursued it. It was a rough road to hoe, but I got my daughter into a specialized program, and at 12 years old, I sent my daughter to one of the Manhattan prep schools. So she went to school with Trump kids and Rockefeller kids, and one of her friends, her father owns the Milwaukee Bucks. Another one of her friends was President Obama's campaign manager. So the point is, these are the circles that she grew up in, that she was raised in.
Mhm.
So it all starts from that Montessori method, challenging what children can be taught at a certain age. It shapes their mindsets and leads to exposure to other cultures. So, you know, when you have exposure to other cultures, you don't feel like a fish out of water as a black person going into the traditional corporate American work environments because I've heard so many black people say that their first interaction with any other cultures was college.
Mhm.
And so I'm of the opinion that that can be a disadvantage. An advantage is exposure to other cultures and other forms of education growing up.
Mhm.
So, from my opinion, the Montessori method and that emphasis on a wider form of education is a huge benefit and advantage.
Hmm. That's good. That's actually good. I think that had I been exposed to a Montessori school, that I would probably be more advanced than I am right now, or where I am right now. Um,
Mhm.
but I kind of gravitated towards that method of learning too, right? So I was always like a hands-on person where I picked up, electronics and things like that, and have always ripped them apart if I did not break them. Um, I was ripping apart transistor radios and things like that, and always with a screwdriver, a Phillips or something like that, trying to always modify something. So I always had that passion to always be involved in hardware and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I was a tinkerer, right? So that's what I was basically saying. But that's good though. You and your daughter's experience. So whoa, what just happened?
Are
Uh,
you there?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, fine. I can. You're
Okay,
fine.
okay. Um, and I think that you and your daughter's experience is a positive one, right? And I sometimes I think black people get caught up in I want my child to be around a public school where they have exposure to other kids and this and that. I think the public schooling route is probably not the best route. It's like the least it's the route that should be least chosen or should be last on the list, right? In comparison to private Montessori and homeschooling, right? I'm not sure if there's a particular order that should be established, but um, what I hear about Montessori schools, it should be like number one priority, and then comes homeschooling, and then comes public education.
Yeah, totally. Because the public education system in America is horrible. It's absolutely horrible. There is a reason why, amongst developed nations, first world nations around the world, America is at the bottom of the list in terms of science, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
Hmm.
And where did that come from? That comes from the public education system. So, I would always speak to teachers and principals and educators every chance that I got, and across the board, they would all say the same thing. If they had years, 10 or 15 years plus
Hmm.
teaching, and they would say that the educational standards are horrible. They're horrible. Everything is about teaching towards a test or trying to meet certain pass rates for students for that teacher to keep his or her job. So you're not actually educating. You're not preparing people to go out into the real world. Okay, so how can you hope to compete when you do not have the proper education?
Hmm.
Okay, so it's not about indoctrination, it's about education,
Hmm.
exposure to science, technology, engineering, mathematics, the arts, history, culture, everything. To focus on any one area is a weakness and a liability. Because then now what that does is that shapes your mindset, and then that shapes your focus. So if you can be thoroughly well versed in one or two aspects or mindsets, but yet another person, they may not be thoroughly well versed, but if they have at least a working and competent knowledge in say 10 to 15 mindsets and viewpoints, guess what, there is an overwhelming chance that that person will be more successful than you in life at every level of the socioeconomic strata. So that focus and that mindset of education, 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 whatever your agendas and narratives are, you cannot achieve them through high-minded ideals and hashtags. You have to have the intellectual capability and ability to do so.
Hmm.
Also, Mike, one time, and it was, really quick.
Go ahead.
You heard you had a chance to hear my daughter speak. You know, you asked
Mhm.
her one or two questions. DE asked one or two questions. My my daughter is a valley girl. She
Mhm.
she's black in name only, and that's not necessarily such a bad thing
Mhm.
because when I look at the circles that she moves in and the track for life that she has, I can't be mad at that. I really cannot.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right?
Well, I am still to this day, it's black people say, Paulie, you're not black, uh, white boy. Why do you like all that white people stuff? I'm like, well, let's look at your life and let's look at mine. So
Mhm.
it's not about, and see, the thing is, it's not about white stuff or black stuff. It's about being successful in life. So um, at the end of the day, if you claim if you claim if you live in an English speaking country, which is America, you live in an English speaking society, yet you do not speak clear, coherent English, that in and of itself will always put you at a disadvantage. Okay? So at what point did it become speaking clear, coherent English amongst black people has gained that moniker that you're talking white? I just don't understand that. But
Mhm.
again, education, in my opinion, is the key to success in life.
Absolutely agree with that. So the benefits of a Montessori school, I think you kind of expounded on that already. Especially who your daughter, what kind of networks your daughter moves with, and how it made her out, how it cultivated her as well. Because you did talk about how she she's black in name only, but everywhere else, she's more worldly rounded, right? So I say all that to say that I think there's a cultural intelligence piece that is being built in these Montessori schools that you seem to be describing, um, where they have these interactions with other groups of children that may not even look like them and come from different backgrounds, but they all seem to have the same pace of and level of education, right? And acumen.
Right. You know, also, there's another piece. Like I'll just say this really quick. School that I went to, as I said, my mom sent me to a predominantly white school in a white neighborhood. So I had two types of black friends. I had black friends who had two American parents, and then I had friends like myself who had either one or two West Indian parents. So
Hmm.
what I noticed was that myself and my West Indian friends who were born here but had one or both West Indian parents, again, like myself in America. So there was more of a focus and emphasis on education and getting ahead in life.
Hmm.
Whereas my, 100% black American friends, that was not the focus. That sounds harsh, but that's a reality. So now, 25 years later, or was it, damn, even more than that, 20 plus. I'm like kind of dating myself a little bit, but you know, as I run across, my friends, the focus is because the focus was more towards education and success and excellence. That has been reflective in their lives. Whereas my 100% black American friends, not as successful in life. So, you know, I'm not trying to create some sort of a divide because I myself, I'm half and half. One parent was American, one parent was West Indian. My point is, I noticed from what I experienced growing up, there was a much more powerful focus on education and success and multiculturalism and multicultural exposure
Hmm.
from one background and experience compared to the other.
What's going on, brother Nagone?
Hey, what's going on? What's going on? Hey, Paul. Guten. Was it? Guten Tag. Guten Tag, mein Bruder. Is that it? Is that it?
Close, very close, close. It would be
Okay.
Guten Tag, mein Bruder, but
Mein Bruder. Yeah, that's right. That's
but
right. Or
at
mein Freund. All right, man. It's good to see you here, fam.
always
And
a pleasure, sir.
what's going
Much
on,
much
Mike?
respect.
How are
I'm
you,
chilling. I'm chilling, bro. What's going on with you?
man? It's kind of had a pretty decent weekend. Beautiful night out here. Also, once again, I'm sitting. It's kind of funny. I'm almost like an old timer now, man. I'm sitting in my house, garage door sitting open. I'm sitting here in my lazy chair. I'm not in the back. I'm on the front,
Hmm.
and just kind of chilling out, man. Watching the neighborhood a little bit, and just kind of looking like got not an old man anymore, but I'm not an old man right now. But just kind of chilling like one is kind of funny. So
Well,
lay it
Nagone,
back.
Nagone, you ought to come to where I am because, oh my God, yo, the heat wave that is sweeping across Europe, they can't handle it. And I'm like, how is 90 degrees a heat wave? You got to be kidding me.
Well, hold
Oh,
on a
you?
second. You remember that heat wave they had in France? I think that was maybe 2 years ago, where France did not have, they weren't prepared for. I think they had a couple of 95, close to 100-degree days. People were up in there croaking, bro. People were dying up in their apartments.
Because it never gets that hot here. All right,
Yeah.
you know, even in France, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, it doesn't get that hot. It really only gets hot in the Med. So the south of France, Monaco, Spain, Greece. Outside of that, they don't see temperatures like that. So I walk around and they're like, oh, it's ice, ice, ice. Like, I understand that. It's hot. For you, for me, 90 is a regular day. It's a walk in the park. So I find that amusing.
Yeah,
Well,
I have to agree.
so Nagone, do you have anything you want to add about Montessori schools? And
The Montessori school system is kind of how it came here. It's hold on a second. It was it's been really employed in the United States here. I think since the turn of the 19th century or early 20th century, I do believe. From Montessori, that was her name, if I'm correct. Um, and it was a system that was really designed, I think, to really kind of enhance learning from a few different areas as opposed to maybe some of the old rote ways that I think we were classically learned. Regardless, it's a system that has been very successful with learning. Um, Black kids seem to do very well underneath it when they're exposed to it, but we don't have a lot of people engaged in a Montessori schooling educational system. And I think that should be something that we should employ more. I know we're homeschooling a lot of our kids now, which we seem to be getting a lot of um, success from as well. But I think it works well for us, um, and anyone who can get their kid in that type of system, I think will they'll do well by it. There's a Montessori school system near where my ex and where my other house is, where they're living there, and there's one very close to that. I didn't send them there. They actually went to the public school there, and they seem to do okay there. But those who were going to that Montessori school system there they were poof, they swore by it. So it seemed like kids are doing very well, and those who get out of those schools, even middle school, going into high school, they seem to perform better.
hmm.
So that's what I have to say about it. I have not had my kids in that system, but everyone who I've seen who's had their kids in that type of system, their kids have done very well, very well.
All right. Complex
Yo,
Design. What's going on?
man, I'm kind of. I didn't know. I thought we were getting started at the same time we got started last night, so I was asleep. Sorry.
Complex, how are you? Good morning, sir.
Hey, Paul, you gone? What's going on, G?
What's up, baby?
Not much, man. Not much.
Wake
Um,
up, man. Wake up. Wake up.
yeah, dude. Oh crap. I'm sorry, man. Look, man. My little one was out in the pool. I was sitting outside with her stuff, man. I got zapped. My apologies,
Dude,
everyone.
dude, it is 4 o'clock in the morning in Germany right now. If I'm up, you can be
You know
up.
what, Paul? I don't need this from you right now, man. Uh, um, what am I coming in on, man? Where we at with it? Have we touched on who Maria Montessori was and all of that?
We were talking about kart racing.
That has nothing to do with Montessori schools.
So
No,
no, Paul Bryant touched on his experience and his daughter's experience in dealing with Montessori schools and how it became beneficial for them. Uh, he being a parent and she being a daughter, how
mhm.
it helped cultivate them. Nagone touched on the importance of Montessori schools. So, in the origin. So, if you can kind of elaborate on your experience with Montessori schools and your child.
Yeah. Well, let's see. It kind of started with my wife. My wife was an educator, and so before we had my little lady here, um, she was adamant. We talked about this even just before pregnancy occurred and all of that. Just what would be the course of education for our children.
Mhm.
And so her whole thing was, and she was like staunch on this, was that at least up until first grade, our children would go to a Montessori school. Now I had known about Montessori schools, really didn't know it in detail like she did. She was an educator. She worked in Chicago with adult ed. She worked in, she had worked as a substitute teacher at high schools. She put together curriculum for education programs and the sort. And just from what it was that she just saw in her time there, in education, she saw that Montessori having an early education, um, based on the Montessori method, we just went a long way. She just noticed that like kids who did that were always like miles ahead of everyone else. So her whole thing was that she was gonna get certified in as a Montessori instructor, and then our children would go to a Montessori school. So it was kind of one of those things where I kind of made that promise to her, that's what our daughter would do. And when I got back to California after her passing, I put my daughter in a Montessori school at the age 3. She had just turned. She turned 3 in October, and then in February, that following February, I put her in. So at 3 years old, she started, and she went all the way from 3 to 6. And I'll just tell you, man, she's miles ahead of the kids in her class, in her peer group now, going into the second grade. So if I could, cost is one of the things that you do have to consider in terms of a Montessori institution. But if I could go back to paying what I was paying in order to have her in one, I would pull her out of public schools and put her right back in there.
All right. All right. Let me just read this article real quick. This one is from chalkbeat.org. What does Montessori mean in the age of school choice? Researcher Mara Debs explains. Montessori education is about to get a significant jumpstart in the form of $1 billion from Jeff Bezos, the wealthiest man in the world. That means the release of a new book on Montessori is well timed. In it, Myra Debs now the director of Yale's Education Studies program, traces the history of Montessori education and describes the experiences of families and educators at two Montessori magnet schools in Hartford, Connecticut. I didn't even know they had a magnet school for Montessori. Montessori can, if someone's, there's some feedback coming on onto the panel. If people can mute yourself up, please. Montessori can both contribute uh, to ameliorate school segregation. She points out in diverse families and desirable schools, and the programs offer a vivid example of how affluent families are able to prioritize finding a good fit school, while low-income families struggle to just find a decent option. Montessori Montessori's appeal among a wide range of families and its offer of an individualized learning experience has made it a key model for racially and economically integrated schools, writes Debs, who helped start a public Montessori school in New Haven, Connecticut. But she warns Montessori is particularly vulnerable both historically and today to being diverted to serve predominantly middle class and white students. Montessori, a philosophy developed by Italian educator Maria Montessori in the early 1900s, is often seen as the province of private school, and there are more than 2,000 private Montessori programs in the U.S. today. But it also exists within traditional school districts. Estimates suggest there are more than 500 public Montessori programs, about 40% of those likely to be white and come from higher 40% of those are charter schools. Students in public Montessori are substantially more likely to be white and come from higher income families than students in their school districts overall, according to Dev's research. Expand this a little. There's surprisingly little research on Montessori's effects on student outcomes, though recent studies on schools in South Carolina and Hartford have found encouraging results. Still, Deb said there's a lot more research that needs to happen. Chalk Beat spoke with Debs about how Montessori fits into the school choice ecosystem, while some parents are wary of the approach and whether she's optimistic about Jeff Bezos' ambitions. I'm not going to read all of this because I don't think it's really relevant to what we're trying to talk about, but I just wanted to make sure I pointed out that this discussion is happening. If I remember correctly, Jeff Bezos actually graduated from a Montessori school when he was younger, um, and they kind of point to the fact that Jeff Bezos actually came out of that thing swinging. He was more advanced than his other counterparts, which would
Yeah.
explain how he got to where he is today.
Um, yeah, from my personal experience with the Montessori school, again, as I said, I sent my daughter to a Montessori school when she was 3.5, and I sent her to that, of course, was a private school. I sent her to a second private school for the first grade, which I believe is six when you go to first
Mm-hmm.
grade, if memory serves correct.
Mm-hmm.
So from whatever three is, preschool, pre-K, or daycare, whatever, all the way up through K, she was at that Montessori school. So then I took her out of there and then sent her to first grade forward to her second private school. So personally, I am of the opinion from my experience, the Montessori method gives such a blueprint and opens up a child's mind towards learning because children are a sponge at that age. Um, the method, I don't think, is as effective past, say, maybe first or second, but those formative years from those early ages, and again, the focus on challenging the traditional Western method of what a child can be taught at a given age. Okay, so that blueprint was carried over to the second private school that I sent my daughter to. So Montessori, I'm of the opinion, is an excellent method for children of a very young age. Again, from as young as 3. So by the time that um, my daughter was in the second grade, um, she was already learning algebra by second grade. That blew my mind. So what the principal at the Montessori school said, that my daughter would have a natural gravitation towards science and mathematics, that was clearly proven. So, personally, I cannot say enough about the Montessori method, and I cannot say enough about education in private schools as a whole. If if a parent, in my opinion, has to make a choice between a new car and sending their child to a
Mm-hmm.
quality private school, I would wholeheartedly suggest Montessori school and then a private school after that.
Yep. Yep. I agree 100%, Paul. Mike, did you go over what the Montessori principles?
I
Did you
did
touch
not go
on
over
it?
the principles. Do you know the principles?
Yeah, yeah, hold on. Let me give me a second. I'm gonna do a screen share.
All right.
And then she said she would, so I was gonna do a quick interview with my daughter.
No, I'm
Awesome,
quitting.
bro. That's
Daddy,
awesome.
Daddy, I'm quitting. Okay?
That's awesome.
All right, hold on 1 second here. Oh, there we go.
See, at least your daughter will do that. My daughter, with her millennial self, well, one, there's the whole, I'm on a different country, on a different side of the planet, so like a 6-hour time difference there. But I'm sure she's still up, because millennials are on their phones and their laptops 24 hours a day now. So
You guys see this?
Yep.
Okay. So the Montessori theory. This is based on basically the research and research of Maria Montessori. The Montessori theory is an approach to learning developed by Maria Montessori, where the key principles are independence, observation, following the child, correcting the child, prepared environment, and absorbent mind. The Montessori theory approach, concepts, and foundation principles can be applied across all ages. It is within these concepts we find the reasoning behind why things are such in a Montessori environment. The following are the goals and beliefs that Maria Montessori held with regards to her approach to educating children. One is independence. Never help a child with a task at which he feels he can succeed. It's always a good goal. It's always a goal of Montessori education in the classrooms to make the child independent and be able to do things for him or herself. This is achieved by giving children opportunities to move, to dress themselves, to choose what they want to do, and to help the adults with tasks. When the children are able to do things for themselves, there is an increase in their self-belief, self-confidence and esteem that they may carry on throughout their life. Observation. Observation or watching the child is for parent or watching the child is for parents easy to do. We can spend countless hours just watching children and see how they are enjoying themselves and exploring their environment. This was the simple method of how Maria Montessori has learned about children and developed her theories on child development. She observed without preconceived ideas that helped her develop materials that the children needed and were interested in. Observation is also the way adults can learn about what the child's needs are. For example, if a child starts banging on objects, it means that he has a need for that gross motor activity. So give him a drum. If children are pushing things around the room and they need to walk but can't do it for themselves yet, help them or give them a wagon to push. This is how observation can help create harmony for fulfilling a child's current needs. Following the child. Following the child, they will show you what they need to do, what they need to develop in themselves, and what area they need to be challenged in. The aim of the children who persevere in their work with an object is certainly not to learn. They are drawn to it by the needs of their inner life, which must be recognized and developed by its means. From what you have observed from the actions of the children, Follow them in what they need to do. If they want to climb, give them the opportunity to climb in a safe manner. Do not be overprotective. Following the child also means being non-directive. Do not tell them what to do all the time. Give your child the freedom to choose what he wants or needs to do and act on his own. Do not tell them what they have to do, but rather present them with choices of different materials or toys. Also, stand back and watch the child what he does. There is no need to intervene all the time unless he has become really destructive or about to hurt themselves or others. Knowing when to intervene is a skill parents will learn as they get to know their child and as parents have set limits for the child. And correcting the child. Correcting our children make mistakes. They may spill something, drop food unintentionally, and so on. There's no need to raise your voice in situations like those. Instead, calmly recognize the mistake by saying something like, "Oh, you spilled water. Why don't we get a cloth to wipe it up?" This is an opportunity to ask the child to do some valid practical work with you. You will find that children do like to clean up as they see it as something adults do. There is no need to blatantly point out a child's mistake. There is a way to make them realize it. For example, with a cloth bib, a child who is learning how to drink from a glass will find out that if he tips the glass a bit too early, the water will spill on him and he will feel it. If they mispronounce a word, there's no need to correct them, but rather say the word correctly. Correcting children may result in them being scared to attempt anything in fear of making another mistake. Children will make mistakes. We need to teach them in a nice manner, giving the children freedom and choice, supporting them in their choice by making sure they are safe, feeding their inquiring minds in a way that they can understand, and observing their needs and fulfilling these can be the key to helping your children develop their full potential. Prepared environment. The teacher's first duty is to watch over the environment, and this takes precedent over all the rest. Its influence is indirect, but unless it be well done, there will be no effective and permanent results of any kind, physical, intellectual, or spiritual. And that's a key point because there is a spiritual element to all of this. When my daughter was in her school, um, everybody there, like the adults, all the teachers and stuff like that, they call the kids friends. They refer to them as friends. They say, "Friends, let's go and do this. Friends, it's time to do this." Or, "Friends, what would you guys like to do today?" That's kind of how they would relate to them. The prepared environment is an important part of Montessori. It is a link for a child to learn from adults. Rooms are child size with activities set up for success and allow freedom of movement and choice. The environment has to be safe for the child to explore freely. The environment has to be ready and beautiful for children, so it invites them to work. So, like what they did at my daughter's school, each room they had they had the lilac room, the lavender room, and I'm trying to remember so they had like three different groups, and like the rooms were colored, very like soft pastel colors.
What was the green room, red room, and blue?
Oh, is it green and red and blue?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was green. Okay. Yeah, I was okay. Okay. Well, she knows.
You say lavender? What did you say,
Yeah.
lavender before?
Yeah, lavender, man. Well, the color was like a lavender type of color, but I guess they just called it. Was it green, red, and blue? The green room, red room, and the blue room.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So she knows better than I do, man. You know what, Mike?
Happy Pride Month, I guess.
Man,
Lavender room.
Well, hey, I'm still waking up here. All right, give me a break. Montessori. Montessori refers to work as an activity the child does, or what many people might call play. She calls this work since it is through this that they create themselves, and it's not just play. Their play is their work, and they are still enjoying it. The adult's role then is to construct the environment in which they will learn. The development of the child is therefore dependent on the environment she or he is in, and this environment also includes parents. The one thing about Montessori also is that at any given time, the parents can just show up and be there. Like you don't have to, you can just be there. It doesn't really matter how long. You can be there all day if you like. If you just want to just basically show up and just sit in and just be there for a while, it's completely open. Montessori observed how children learned the language without anyone teaching them. This sparked her. Montessori observed how children learn language without anyone teaching them. This sparked her idea for the absorbent mind. Children under the age of 3 do not need to have lessons in order to learn. They simply absorb
That's what I
everything.
love the most
Yeah.
about this thing. And
Yes.
that's why I said
Yes.
it wasn't a learning by rote system. She had a whole different type of system that really worked. That's why people really acceded to this kind of teaching, and they're so right. And they're so right about the language piece. All they have to do is expose these kids, because at that young age, that mind is just going to pick that language up, and you're going to learn how to speak it, and your native tongue, along with the language you're learning, literally accent free.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. They understood that a long time ago, but that's what I love about it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt
no,
you.
you're good. I mean, because it's
That
good
was
that you say that, because man, when I when she was there, there would be like, so let's say like there was like a kid who was like in her group, and let's say they were at like age 4, 4.5, right? And then that kid had like a little brother or little sister. So at about 2.5, 3, like the parents would bring them in. And then after maybe like about 3, 4 months, you would hear these little kids, they're like 3, and you just hear them talking. And it was like they all spoke so well. And it was just because they were just absorbing like language from like all the other kids talking. And because there wasn't like where everybody had to sit down and be quiet and all that, and everybody was just talking, they just quickly just picked up language, man. And so these kids would be all small, man. And then you just I have some videos. I have one video on my channel where I just kind of went to go pick up my daughter one day, and it used to tickle me, man. Every time I would go to pick her up, well, what happened when I would show up, and I'd have these little kids just run up on me and start like messing with me, playing with me and stuff. And so, I just made a little video about it, man. And it was just really cool because these kids were like, they were like small, but I would just have conversations with them, man. They'd just be talking with me. So it was really cool. They simply absorb everything in the environment by experiencing it and being a part of it. It is therefore important that the environment is set up is good, nice, and positive, since this is what the child will absorb whether he chooses to or not. The language of the adult is one that a child will easily pick up. Be careful what you say around them. Even though you think they are not listening, as they may not be able to express themselves yet, when they can, you will not want them swearing back at you. It is for this reason that one should not try to say no to a child. We do not want them saying no to us rudely. Instead, we say stop when we want to tell children what they are doing wrong.
Dude, that right there is a monumental importance, because a lot of children, you cannot imagine the stories of teachers having to call parents into school because the child was cursing at other students. And I made it a point and went out of my way to absolutely positively never curse in front of my daughter. Okay. My daughter is 23 years old. So it may or may not come out every now and again. But after so many years, it's like I trained myself. I don't curse around my daughter. I just don't. So
Very, very
she
important point.
grew up with that, and that level of respect. And I'll leave that there.
Well,
No. I just want to say this. He makes a really good point, because I was watching. Somebody sent me actually a video last week. Here's a black teacher. She got kids. They were having this little graduation ceremony for some. I think maybe the class was graduating. I don't know, maybe out of the 5th grade to the 6th, and they had the younger kids in there. And this must have been like maybe a first grade kids. And you saw the teacher saying, "Okay, I just want to welcome all the parents. I want to welcome boys and girls." And then one of these kids, a little peanut, a little sawed off little peanut, was like, "Shut the F up." And they were like, "What?" And they were like, "What? What?" I guess he wants to leave. Do you want to leave? Don't talk to me like that, bitch. I mean, and then they pull this little peanut up from the front, and he's knee high to a June bug, literally going off. And I'm like, what? And then the father came home and picked him up. I said, Dad, he learned from the parents. Because this kid, he was like, shut the F up. Said that to the teacher. And I mean, he was loud. And this guy was, I mean, tiny thing, blasting, popping off. So, whatever was going on in that parent, that kid's household, he was picking that up, and then he just decided to bust off right in the middle of that class, and he thought he was funny, but they had to swagger him on out of there. But
do you think he might have been a member on the or a panel member on the Sunday Rumble?
No.
Listen, I gotta go to mute, man.
Hey, you know what? And I will say I will raise my hand and I say I'm a guilty party. Nagone, there's been times when we've been on the phone and like I didn't think my daughter was around, and I might let a word slip, and in the background my daughter would be like, "Daddy, you said a bad word," and I'd be like, "Oh shoot." You know what I mean? Like,
I can attest to that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You've been on the phone with me, dude.
And I've been on the phone. With Complex. Like, oh shit, man. Daddy said a bad word. I'm like,
and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry, baby. And I gotta like watch myself, man. So like my daughter, she's not even.
I can attest to it.
Yeah, she's not even the type to actually like repeat what I say. She's the type to check me when I say it.
Good, and you know what? That's a good thing. But Complex, the real question is, do you trade when you trade your Litecoin? Are you also trading dusty beta male coins also?
So
no, actually, I'm hodling. I'm hodling my beta male coins right now.
But
all
jokes aside,
y'all offended.
highly.
But
hey, Gabe is on the panel as well. Welcome, Gabe. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on, Gabe?
Hey, man.
You have anything you want to add to this? You've been silent for a while now.
Yeah, my bad. I just kind of been double dipping, doing a couple of things as I've been here. Yeah, I don't have any kids, so I'm kind of soaking in a lot of this information. I know I came up in an environment where my mother didn't swear or anything, and I think that it was so funny going to school. I would, kids get in trouble and they're like, "Oh, your mom about to cuss you out when you get home." I'm like, "Cuss me out? Like, what does that even mean?" So, I think that we, had a different perspective of what discipline was like as I was growing up from the peers in my classroom. So, yeah, nothing in particular, man. Just kind of soaking up what you guys are saying right now.
I grew up just like you. My parents are Caribbean as well, and to this very day they just don't curse. Like a curse word is like
bro,
it's like a red line in the sand.
That is not happening in a West Indian household. All right, so I had one American parent, I had one West Indian parent, but irrespective, there was absolutely no cursing in my house growing up. That was not tolerated. That was not heard. Okay, I am in my mid 40s and I do not curse around my mom. Period. Because that's how I was raised. That's what it was. Of course, Saturday in a West Indian house is cleaning the house all day in the morning while Gil Bailey is on the radio on WLIB. But as Mike said, so it comes back to cultural EQ or cultural intelligence. So the standards and the values at home. So the mindset, all right. So the focus on education, whether it's the arts, whether it's science, technology, engineering, arts, mathematics, STEM or STEAM. So education and excellence and success. So there was a term in the Caribbean, slackness. All right, you do not accept slackness, and you have to be the best and outperform. Period. You are black. Yes, there are hurdles. Yes, but you're not a victim. Okay.
Yeah.
Slackness will not be tolerated in the way you look, in the way you speak, in the manner in which you dress, the manner in which you carry yourself. So
Mhm.
that all starts in the home.
Yeah.
So I could not understand when I would see certain people and their 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 parent wanted to be friends with their kids. So
Yeah. That
I'm
was a biggie.
looking at a friend calling their mom by her first name. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? If my father would have heard me calling my mom or him by the first name right upside the head,
Yeah.
that was just not that it was not tolerated because that was the high level of standards that
That,
Yeah.
I had
that's
from both my
also old
parents.
school. That's old school way of coming
Yeah.
up also, because today is different. Today it's different. These kids, they have a different view. I remember even
Yeah.
my kids' friends. They were like, Carl. I was like, yo, you call me Mr. B. What's up?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You don't call me my first name. You know what I mean? Please. I got drawers older than you. What you talking about?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think
Come
also
on.
kind of to that same
You
point,
know.
it was
So,
I think a lot of my friends, they're like you said, their parents were their friends. It's like
No.
they had a lot younger parents, right? They like I didn't listen to the same music as my mother or my father because we had a bit of a generational gap. My mom had me when she was like 34, 35 years old. So we were not in our the same peer group. So but with my friends, right, growing up on the west side of Detroit, going to Detroit public schools, it was very different because they had a lot younger parents. Their parents were in their 20s. We were in high school, so they were listening to the same music, kind of involved in the same things. So it was definitely a difference in just the precedents that was set at home, just because of the generations that were present there. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I know how Polly grew up, man. Polly, get your ass clot. Get
You
licked,
ears,
Polly. Licked, Polly.
you ears them tough, eh?
Oh, so he must be
You can't hear
Trinidadian.
must feel yes.
Who, Polly?
I was
No,
like,
Polly is your mother is Ghanaian, right?
No,
Not Ghanaian.
no,
GT.
mine,
No, GT.
no. Yeah, my mom is from America. My mom is African American. My dad is from Nigeria.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mother's Bayesian, so
Hmm.
Yeah, my mom is GT. So it's it was no. You can't hear must feel yes. You ear them tough. You want licks. You want
mhm.
it was that's what it was. It was just like you say old school, bro. As I said, I have some of my friends' parents who, when I go back home and I see them now, it's still Mr. So and so or Mrs. So and so. How are you, sir? That's how
Mm-hmm.
I was raised. When I walk into someone's house, I take my hat off. I
Mhm.
take my shoes off at the front door. You
And you
don't
say
put your
good
hat
night.
on
You
the
don't. You say good night when it's nighttime. You don't say it when you leave, and you say it when you come in.
Mm-hmm.
correct.
Yep.
Correct. To this day, I eat at my dining room table. I'm the only one in the house. I eat at the dining room table. I don't eat in the living room. I don't
Yeah,
eat
I
in the
don't.
bedroom. At the dining room table. That's how I was raised.
Hmm.
It's just old. It's old school. So to circle around to what Nagone just said. These young kids today are buck wild. And as Mike likes to say, there is a lack of respect for hierarchy. And history. You know, Nagone is a few years older than I am. I have the utmost respect for the fact that that brother has walked further along the path that I have. That there is experiences that he has had and he has seen that I have not. So there is an inherent level of respect there. You do not see that amongst these youngsters today. You just
just
don't.
look here. Just look here on YouTube. You will see kids. I know this one guy. He's about 28 or 29, talking real loud, talking smack to me and other people. I mean, I, I I've seen that. You just look here on
Right.
YouTube. You see it right here. I'm not going to get into names or anything else like that. That's all in the past. But what I'm saying is, you see some of this stuff, and when I have to say, or my father, all of his friends and everything else like that. It was Mr. This, Mr. That, Mr. This, Mr. That. That's how it
Right.
was. We, it was always salutations. It was how we raised. My father, he was very old school. Old Southern, Southern Baptist, background. So
Mm.
if you rolled out of there, talking sideways, you were going to be moving sideways. You know what I'm saying? So that's just kind of,
Yeah, they use bamboo. They use bamboo in the West Indies, so you don't get a belt.
What I'm
Correct.
saying, or it wasn't nothing to to get 5 fingers across the side of side of your face. So that's just kind of how that was, and that's how I was raised, very old school. I did the same thing with my kids, so they understood that as well. But a lot of parents feel as though that was something that was not a big deal. I saw that very much when I was growing up as a kid amongst the white kids,
Mm.
and they would be out there, you know, just calling. I remember this one white kid it just felt very comfortable calling my father by his first name, and I was like, you should call him Mr. Bass. Well, my parents called him Ben, so I was like, no, I'm not really too cool on that. And then I was kind of I was mean mugging him, and he started getting nervous because he was like, is this dude gonna attack me? I was like, it might happen because we ain't respecting you like that. So so you better come correct. So that's just how that was. But I see it now. I see one of my other friends. He's he's of mixed race, but he's raising his kids. I think very very loose. And I don't like I don't like his sons. One of his boys
Mm.
tried to get a little loud at me one time on the phone. I say I will be on the next thing smoking. All right, and I will be out there, and I swear for God, I will wrap my hand around your head like a turban,
Mm.
and then see if you keep talking that mess.
Mm.
He got quiet. He got quiet on the phone because I was like, I'll be on the next thing smoking out there, fam. And that's he's out there in AZ. Shit, man, I'll get in the car and drive 37 hours to come get your ass. That's how that is. So and then he's like, well, I mean, I didn't really have much. I'm like, D, you're gonna get out. You let these guys on amok.
Oh, you mean
So
DE Raptor?
no, they D
Oh,
Raps.
oh.
No,
I
no.
don't think D Raps play that either. But
No, no, sir.
but that's kind of that's just how I roll. But I see some of these kids out here, talking real sideways, and and I understand the lack of structure, the lack of authority that they have
Well,
in their house. Because men bring, if you have a man that's in your house, a man's man in the house, you're going to understand a certain level of authority. Like my
Thank you.
son, my son, he's he always knew, he could, we could argue, but if he decided to get real snappy in the mouth, and I'd be like, hold on a second, what? And then all of a sudden,
Paulie, you want to play the fool? Want to play the fool, Paulie?
Ah,
busted
Go
the
on,
blood
go on,
clot,
Paulie.
man.
Go
Nah,
on, Paulie, and
man.
play the fool. Go on,
Bro,
Paulie, and play the fool.
bro,
Lick,
let me,
lick,
Don't
do
talk
you
that.
understand me?
I'll
Lick.
be right. I'll be right there. I'll be
bro,
there.
let me
Mm-hmm.
tell you
So
something. Let me
nah,
tell you something. I was
we ain't
16
playing like that.
years old, okay, and I spoke to my father sideways because I thought I was big man because I was 16 and I was already 6 feet tall, close to him because he was 6'3", and I was 16 and still growing, and I mouthed off of my father. He looked at me, he grabbed me with one hand. And I will never forget this. May he rest in peace. He grabbed me by my arm, and bro, he shook me like a rag doll. Like I was a
old
rag
man
doll.
strength.
I was like, what in the hell? Because he had that old man strength.
Yep.
My
Just
old man was
country big. Just
my old
country
man was
big
82nd Airborne.
from freaking,
Okay, 82nd Airborne. Okay,
yeah.
Rocky Mount, North Carolina. That's where we grew up. They, that's where they were.
Mhm.
Them backwood country Negroes. That's just how it was. And and my grandfather, he was a minister. And he was the kind of guy. If you were goofing off in the middle of his sermon, he'd finish his sermon, get up, and tear your ass out the thing after he was done. And that's how he rolled. That's how they rolled. It was quick, fast. It was reliable. It was reliable. So that's just kind of how things were. That's gone now. So and you don't, so you see this madness going on. But
Let me ask a question. Are you
No,
familiar with Dr. Amos Wilson? Because I read
yeah,
one of his
yeah.
books, and he performed a scientific study. It was refuted, and then the entire academic world, they replicated it, and it was accepted fact. It is general known fact. Black children develop faster than
Mhm.
every other ethnicity. Black children walk sooner. They start speaking sooner. So the question is, if black children are developing physically faster and developing mentally faster, they walk earlier and they start to speak earlier. So where is the disconnect? That was Amos Wilson's question. There is a disconnect somewhere. And
well,
I will leave that open for discussion.
I'll say that
I,
it was in the schooling system. But if you look at a lot of smart Black parents today who are homeschooling their kids, these kids are coming up and they are stellar. I'm just gonna I'll just leave it at that. Stellar, stellar students, stellar.
I
Yeah, Mike.
wanted to get yeah, I wanted to get Dr. Phoenix' opinion on this before I go on to the next article. Also, I think the 10 principles of the Montessori school system could be applied in the manosphere as well.
Yep, I would agree. Hey, what's going on, Dr. Phoenix?
Good evening, gentlemen. So my experience dealing with Montessori schools didn't actually come until I was an undergrad because I grew up in Chicago, but I mostly went to public schools. But for high
Sorry to hear
school,
that.
you know what? Actually, I went to a really good high school. I went to a magnet high school on the south side of Chicago. It was considered the first magnet high school on the south side of Chicago. So back then, if you went to the public schools, I mean, I'm sure they had Montessori schools, and my parents were Muslim. They were in the Nation of Islam, so they were real old school. They had me when they were much older, and so but again, back in those days, the competition again in school wasn't necessarily really get into private schools per se. I mean, they were around. You have some really good ones, but really it was the big public schools, and the big ones back then was Whitney Young, Jones Academy. You had Northside Prep, Walter Payton Prep, Lane Tech. I can't think of the other one. There was a couple of them. So basically, the competition was to get into about 5 or 6 or so, top tier magnet schools in the city. These were the top. Whitney Young being considered the best at that time.
That's
Um,
the Dolphins. The Dolphins, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, my sister-in-law, my
yeah.
sister's sister went there. Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty much most of your Boulay, Jack and Jill type kids.
Yep.
They went to Whitney Young. Pretty much most of your local celebrities, politicians, especially the folks that are in the media that are from Chicago. They went to Whitney Young because of the proximity of it to University of Illinois. It's literally right across the highway from the University of Illinois and right down the street from the United Center where the Bulls play. But so they created that at this time. They brought this school on 111th and King Drive. It's in the Pullman neighborhood. So if you gentlemen, I'm sure you gentlemen are all familiar with the Pullman Porters and all of that. But there used to be a Catholic high school over there, and so the Chicago public school system brought the school. Used to be an all boys Catholic school called Mendel. They brought it back in the late 90s and turned it into the first magnet high school on the south side of Chicago. And it was called Southside College Prep. And so I ended up going there because originally I applied to Whitney Young, didn't get through the lottery process. So they actually pulled all the students who didn't get through the lottery process and they pulled us all into there. So I ultimately ended up going to high school with a bunch of Jack and Jill Boulay kids. So that was probably my first real experience kind of getting a chance to deal with more of an upscale sort of crowd. Because, yeah, I went to some pretty crappy elementary schools in Chicago, but that's neither here nor there. But so when I got here to Milwaukee, when I did my second undergrad in nursing, most of the kids, like I said, there was about 117 of us in my program. Maybe about 8 of us were black. I was the only black male, but the school I went to specifically, I pretty much say it's pretty much a trust fund baby school, like Marquette. I went to the UW school, but pretty much basically trust fund baby school. A lot of immigrants go there, especially a lot from Asia, East Indians and Asians. And so again, so my particular program, most of the white students either went to a private school of some type or Montessori school. So, they were just, again, to get in these programs, get in a program like nursing at a baccalaureate level, the competition is really high. So, unfortunately, a lot of the most of the black kids outside of maybe about 3 or 4 of them who were actually immigrants, their parents were immigrants, so they were first generation. They actually did well, but the ones that failed were the ones who went to the public school system here in Milwaukee. And so I did pretty well in the school, but I ultimately ended up going to school, going to get my undergrad a little later in my late 20s. And so, I had already had some experience, so I already knew what to expect. But, here in Milwaukee, they do have a pretty well-known Montessori school here, and it does very well. Um, and typically, if you look at the public school system in Milwaukee, virtually is all black for the most part. I mean, I think it's probably about 80, about 60 some percent black, another 40 or so percent Hispanic, maybe a small number of white students. But for the most part, most black males who are enter the Milwaukee public school system do not graduate. So roughly about 70 so percent of black males do not attain a high school diploma if they go to a Milwaukee public school. So
Can you repeat that, please? And I apologize for cutting you off. Did you say there was a 70% high school failure rate?
yep,
That's mind-boggling.
yeah.
Man, I was on the phone with Dr. Phoenix last night, man. We were talking like for a while after our hangout last night, and yeah, he was enlightening me to a lot of stuff going on in Milwaukee, man.
Dude, that is
Third world. That's
that's
third world.
cataclysmic.
It
That's
is third world. It really is third world. And I was explaining that to Complex last night when we were on the phone. It is essentially black people here in Milwaukee specifically operate as a third world within a first world city. So again, and like I said, most black people are pretty much corralled into the northwest side of Milwaukee. So the school I went to was on the east side, so it was on a lake. And so, where I went to school, like, there's nothing but mansions and stuff over there. So everything is on the lake. So it's nothing but mansions, a lot of high-end spots, really nice hospital over there. But again, most of my classmates, they went to Montessori schools and going back, because I was listening to some of what you guys were talking about earlier. Most of my classmates, they were, their parents were like physicians and nurses and attorneys and engineers and, scientists, stuff like that, entrepreneurs, businessmen, whatever. And so, they came from, very well-to-do backgrounds. And, me, I was a kid from the south side of Chicago. But again, I had been doing well for myself since I was fairly young. So, but, again, the students that did not do well and that do not do well in general at university level were ones who went to the Milwaukee public schools. And specifically, my school has a program that they only pitched it to my school because of its proximity to the hood, if you will, for lack of a better term. And my school was the only one that was willing to actually participate in this program, because originally they approached UW-Madison, which anyone's familiar with that school, that's a top tier public school, and Marquette University. And so those two schools said, no, we don't want nothing to do with it, because, again, UW-Madison is one of those schools where you don't come to them, they come to you. So, and Marquette, just trust fund baby central. I mean, you pretty much get a bunch of rich kids going to Marquette. And so my school has, yeah, what's up, bro?
I just need to get to this article.
Okay, yeah.
All right, so this one is from SavannahNow.com. Montessori schools draw peak demand in Savannah. The portable classrooms that comprise coastal Empire Montessori's charter schools campus pale in stature to the commanding historic. Let me expand this. Commanding historic building that houses Ellis Montessori, the district's choice Montessori program across town. Based on the number of applications the school received and the size of the wait list, both programs are sought after. The kindergarten through fifth grade Coastal Empire program, in theory, could help to prepare students for sixth to eighth grades at Ellis. Somebody has a lot of feedback. If you're not talking, please mute. Which requires new students to have prior Montessori experience starting with fourth grade. But because of choice application criteria, it's not a given coastal Montessori students will be accepted. It's great to have another Montessori school in the district, said Tanya Melville, principal at Ellis, who previously served as the principal at Coastal Empire Montessori from 2009 to 2011. Our hope is their school will flourish, or our school will flourish. Maybe the district will consider another Montessori school. But Coastal Empire's staff said the charter school won't fully flourish until it has a permanent home. I don't think we're going to be fully comfortable knowing we've done everything we could until we have a facility we can do it in, said Catherine Davis, head of curriculum at Coastal Empire Montessori, 301 Buckhalter Road. The school system has not provided a building for Coastal Empire. Interesting. Meanwhile, about 70% of Ellis Montessori students live within walking distance of the school and Melville said it's not a coincidence. Many parents hold off buying a house until their child has a spot at Ellis and then move to live near the school. Where the mantra is, worship the wonder, Melville said. We've got to keep that alive for ourselves, she said. The children model it for us. Ellis and Coastal Empire are two of a handful of public Montessori schools in Georgia. And Melville said Ellis has the district support. In terms of partnering with the district and their support of us, I think they recognize our needs are a little different staffing-wise, she said. The school district spends about $10,750 per Ellis Montessori student. According to the fiscal 2019 budget, the district's per student spending at other K-8 school ranges from $9,939 at Isles of Hope K-8 to $7,317 at Hess K-8, K through 8, according to the district's fiscal 2019 budget. The vast majority of spending at regular and choice program schools goes for salaries. About 96% of Ellis Montessori's $5.6 million budget goes for salaries and benefits. The rest pays for utilities and supplies and other purchases. This school year, Coastal Empire Montessori per pupil spending totals about $11,370, including costs related to its facility. According to a budget, the school's chief financial officer, Bill Kovitz, provided to the Savannah Morning News, salaries account for about 63% of its $2.85 million budget. Its facilities maintenance and operation expenditures are about $389,700 a year. As a charter school, Coastal Empire pays the school district an administrative fee of $83,500, which Ellis Montessori doesn't pay. Other administrative costs this year total $85,300, according to the school's budget. It also pays about $99,850 for special services and purchases, such as speech therapy for students, teaching staff development, classroom furniture, and technology. I don't want to read too much into this, but I think we get the gist here that it's highly sought after and a lot of money spent on overhead for the long term, and that people are putting off housing, purchasing their first house or any house for that matter until their kids get into that school. There's a mindset that goes from the parent to the child.
Yep.
They're
we're
thinking long term.
referred
Sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying we had a term for this. We're referred to as Montessorians. So it's basically, you know, the needs of the child come first. So it's just like what Paul is saying, or Nagona was one of you guys saying that you know, you put off buying that new car, right? So the money
Exactly.
you would spend to get the new car, you actually are going to use that to pay for your child's education. You know, same thing with a house, you know, because a house can always be bought, right? But you know, educating a child, okay, they're only going to be a child, but for so long.
And the return on investment is massive because
Exactly.
because a kid who has a good education, you know, and then next, you know, they let's say they become an engineer or you know, or you know, anyone in the professions or top business executive, where that money you outlay right now is coming back to you later on down the line. Your kids are going to be very successful. So it's a critical investment. In fact, that has to be put. How would I say, Paul? Uber alles.
But first,
Sehr gut, sehr gut.
Sehr gut.
and when we get a second, man, I got Miss Almeda Delise here. I wanted to ask her a couple questions about her experience in Montessori and um, you know, and just kind of demonstrate the effectiveness of what it was that she learned there at the time. You know, I have a little paragraph that she'd like to read.
Yeah, go right ahead. I think everybody should mute up for this.
Okay. Yeah. So hold on. I've got Almeda Delise here. Hey, babe, how are you? Come on. Come
Please,
on.
please mute yourself.
Hold on. Come on. Come on. Come on. How so welcome to the Black Brain Trust, babe. How are you?
Good.
You good?
Yeah.
So you know you always hear us having these discussions. We talk about a lot of things. But one of the things we're talking about tonight is Montessori. And you went there. When did you start going there?
Like probably in 2015.
2015. That's right. That's wow. I don't know, I really think about it. You did start going there in 2015, huh?
Yeah.
How old were you?
Like wait, when I started,
Mm-hmm.
probably like 3.
Yeah, you were 3 years old. And you went there, you graduated from there?
Yeah.
Okay. And how old were you when you graduated?
Well, probably I think I was 6.
You were 6 years old. That's right, you were. Oh. So what did you think about Montessori? Like tell me a little bit about well, not tell me, tell everybody who's listening. How did you think about it? Like what did you like about it?
Well, on Friday we get to like play, and sometimes they bring out a jump rope and we just get to play on it. We take turns
Mm-hmm.
and we do like a lot of fun games, and um also like we have like birthday parties every month and that we celebrate.
So you celebrate everybody, you have one day where everybody for that month, you had one birthday party for everyone?
Yeah, one birthday party for like everyone, maybe like November, maybe November or December, I don't know.
Well, just whatever month, right? And
Yeah.
then all the kids would have the party and stuff. And what about like the green room, the red room, and the blue room? I had to get my colors right. But how were so who was like in the red room and the green room and the blue room?
Well, the blue room was fun. I mean,
No, I mean who, like was it the little kids or the big kids or the kids in between? Do you remember
well,
who was where?
the little kids were in the green, the blue kids were like the middle kids,
Hmm.
and the red room like was the big kids.
Okay, and then you weren't in the you were just in the green room and the red room? You
Yeah.
weren't in well, you know, you were in all three, weren't you? Were you in all three?
Yeah, I was all 3.
You were in all three. Okay.
Everyone goes to all 3.
Okay. And then so is it different on how you learn in all of the different rooms?
Well, yeah.
Mm,
In the green room you start easy, and the blue room it gets a little bit harder, and the red room gets a lot harder.
right. That's the big kids, right?
Yeah.
And when you were in let's say like the red room, when you were like 5 and 6 years old, so you also got to like help the teachers, right? You went around and maybe helped the new kids that were coming to the room also?
Yeah, I like sometimes I get to show them like all the places so they know where to go. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe the bathroom, the place where we eat lunch, and our classrooms,
Mm-hmm.
and like where to go out and then.
Okay. So not only were you guys, you not only were you students, but then you were also kind of like teachers to like the new kids too.
Well, actually, all the kids sometimes like the teacher has to pick like one of us to do it,
Mm-hmm.
like in first grade.
Okay. All right. And what did you think about Montessori and your time there? Like, do you wish that you could, do you wish that you were still in a Montessori school now?
Of course, I loved it.
You loved it? Okay, we're gonna try to get you back there, okay?
Can I like meet there?
Hmm.
Can I like meet there?
I mean, well, we have to, well, we moved, we're in a new area, so we'll have to find a Montessori school here. But um, one last thing, I want you, because this is some documentation, this is just some legal stuff that Noah and I were working on. This is like a legal document. Can you read this first paragraph for me?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and read this first paragraph.
On March 4th, 2019, USPS acknowledged the legal status of hemp-derived CBD and provided temporary um,
Acceptance
acceptance
criteria.
criteria for demonstrating when a mailing is
Compliant.
with the 2014 Farm Act. The letter below has been provided to demonstrate compliance and includes a signed
Certification.
certification statement subject to the False Statements Act.
Oh, that is awesome, baby. You did very good. And thank you for taking a few moments to speak with us and tell us about Montessori. All right, guys.
Bro, I just caught a flashback to my baby girl. And your daughter is how old you say? 7?
Yep, she's 7.
Right. So bro, first off, that's awesome. I always love to see a father be an amazing parent. That reminds me back to my baby girl. So by 7, my daughter, she had already moved from her Montessori school to her second private school, but the comprehension, the cognition, the speaking skills, the social skills. So it's like you're sitting down and, yes, a child, so you're gonna have, speaking to a child, but you listen to other 6 and 7 year olds, and they're speaking as if they're 6 and 7, whereas my daughter was speaking like she was already like 12 or 13. So, I see that in your daughter, son. I just caught a flashback there. So, bro, just awesome, bro.
Yeah.
I salute you.
I just want to say this. Um, it's great, great students. Um, oftentimes are made and guided by great parents. So even though you have those that travel throughout this manosphere and other places saying brothers ain't this and brothers ain't that, you're seeing here in the Brain Trust exactly why we have this group and exactly why the narrative that people want to paint about black fathers and so forth, and how they ain't this and how they ain't that, as to why this is. Proud of Ulysses' daughter. I mean, Complex's daughter, and
Thank you, man.
and
Thank you, guys.
and I'm very proud of Complex as well.
Yeah, I like to add
And
something.
I just want to add this real quick. And she speaks better than most women I hear in the manosphere as well.
Oh yeah. She,
Facts.
she's a superstar. But then again, her father's no slouch as well. You know, Rock don't fall too far from the mountain.
Nope. No, it doesn't.
Bro,
Go ahead, Dr. Phoenix.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So in healthcare, we have something called ACEs. It's an acronym meaning Adverse Childhood Experiences or Events. And this goes to the Black Cyber Network and in general, especially after hearing Complex's daughter. So, what do we consider adverse childhood experiences or events? So, basically, there's a series of things. This was created by a pediatrician and a nurse. And so, some of the things we consider one, if you have to constantly relocate as a child, that is considered a childhood trauma. Two, if you go to schools in bad neighborhoods. So, it could be a neighborhood where a child might have to, might be a violent crime area, something like that. Underperforming schools are also considered a childhood trauma. Um, Parent
Bullying.
separation, parent divorce, also considered childhood trauma. Living obviously in an abusive family situation is considered childhood trauma. Bullying is considered a childhood trauma. So there's a series of things. And anyway, anyhow, the point of what I'm getting at is that when you go to Montessori schools, and the brother Paul earlier was talking about his daughter going to schools in New York and how sounds like she was 1 or 2 degrees of separation away from people who were millionaires, 100 millionaires, and even sound like some billionaires, because I thought he said Rockefeller or something like that, if I remember correctly. And so again, part of what needs to happen, because the critical years of development for a child is basically from birth to about 5 years of age. And so during that period, and this is one of the things when I was in nursing school, so we actually had a special guest lecturer. She was a maternal fetal specialist, so she worked specifically in areas of breastfeeding. And it is very well known in the healthcare arena that most Black women do not breastfeed. Somewhere on end, about 80% of Black women do not breastfeed. And the reason why breastfeeding is so important, because it correlates, one, to higher IQs among children. It has regularly been shown through research that breastfed children, especially if they've been breastfed for a minimum of the first year of their life, typically have IQs that are 10 points higher than those who weren't breastfed. And two, the other issue is that during this critical development phase, going to a Montessori school, at least from my own research and from folks that I've met that have gone to these schools, you're exposed to a level of learning and just a very diverse population where kids are learning, they're with other kids who are speaking different languages. So again, kids can learn multiple languages on top of learning their native language at the same time in that critical learning period of birth to about 5 years of age. And so again, when you have a child that is exposed to that, the outcomes in life have shown to be far higher and better than those who have not been. And in relation to where I'm at here in Milwaukee, this is what we typically see. We see children who went to public school system here in Milwaukee, and they're performing far worse than their peers who did not attend public schools or who went to a Montessori school, a private school, or even some of the charter schools here, because charter schools are a big thing here in Milwaukee as well. And so again, I say that to say that there's a very strong correlation between one, the giving your child the best possible start they can, because again, I speak with pre-meds and pre-health professions students all the time, and again, these careers, the preparation start from them not when you walk onto a college campus for the first time, but when they're 4 years old, when they're 3 years old, 5 years old. That's where the preparation starts. So in the case of Complex's daughter, you already seeing that foundation that has been laid, that is in her. So once she gets to that middle school level, once she started learning that pre-algebra, some of those, she's probably starting to dip her foot into the biological sciences right now.
Mm-hmm.
So once they get to that level, they're already grade levels higher than their peers who did not have that foundation. And
exactly, bro. Exactly. And I don't mean to cut you off. My daughter's background, she started off when she was 3 going to a Montessori school. So when she was 6, I sent her to her second private school. So the summer that she was 6, about to start her 2nd grade. They had what's called an advanced summer program. So her teacher recommended it for her. So that summer program gets the kids ready for the next year. Point I'm trying to get to is at 6.5 years old, my daughter started learning algebra at 6.5 years old. So that background starting early from 3 years old. So when she was 7, she started to learn French at 7, and then algebra was taught full time in the school at 7 years old. So one of her summers off between classes, when she was in high school, she had a summer internship where they needed English speaking French speaking English people. So she got that. So the opportunities are endless, but it starts from an early age with the proper education.
Yeah,
But that's consistent. That's consistent with what Dr. Phoenix was saying. I think the other night about third graders being able to identify DNA structures or genomic structures on a board um, at an early age, right? So
yeah,
there's this sort of consistent absorption of learning that is
Mike,
happening at that level.
yeah,
Right.
and
they,
I'm
they,
sorry,
they,
go ahead, brother.
they're teaching kids calculus. They teach kids calculus.
Yeah,
It's kids
Not
understanding
black,
the derivative.
not black kids though. Not black kids.
Oh, you're teaching some black kids this in certain schools. I can tell you right now where I will be tutoring in the next week or two. Kids are learning this. Kids are learning. Black kids are picking this stuff up. See, there are pockets where this is happening. You don't hear about it, but because they don't want you to know about it. But this is going on, and these kids can pick up an amazing amount of information.
My daughter learned calculus in the 5th grade. That
Yeah.
second prep school that I sent her to, um, they were already teaching the kids algebra from the 1st grade. By the time she was in the 5th grade, they were teaching full on calculus. I had to
Absolutely.
buy the child a scientific calculator, and she was like, "Daddy, help me with the homework." I'm like, "Baby girl, not in this lifetime."
Yeah, I mean, if you understand what a derivative is, you understand
Correct.
this. As
yeah,
long as you understand, of f of x,
Yeah,
the change in
dude,
y and the change of x
blew
is
my
a,
mind.
is a slight difference.
Now,
But
yeah,
mind
yet
you,
now you start learning some of these rules: the product rule, chain
yeah.
rule,
And
bro.
given
and
that
so
this, I'm
you
sorry,
pick this stuff up, and it's just like a puzzle for these kids. They start picking this stuff up.
And
They
a
start
really
picking this
important
stuff up.
Yeah, really important piece I want to add, given that this is very much geared towards black men. What I was talking about, this critical age of development from birth to about 5 years of age, is usually around 5 years of age where you start to see specifically black boys fall behind. So this is the age where you start to see black boys get diagnosed with ADHD disorder. So everyone's familiar with that. So, a lot of black boys, they get prescribed Ritalin or Adderall or something like that.
Mm.
And so, and the research has shown that typically black boys start to fall behind around third grade. So once they hit third grade, that's when black boys start to really tape off and not be competitive with their peers.
mm,
So
And
generally
is
by
this
the
in the
time
public
they,
school system? You're looking at Dr. Phoenix? Is that what we're talking
yeah,
about?
this is public school system.
It- it-
Obviously, if they're going to a private school or a Montessori school, the outcomes are obviously much better.
a
But
much better. That's right.
Yep. Yep.
Get them out of those systems. I also say for black boys, get them from in front of these white women school teachers. Get them
yeah,
the hell out in
yeah,
front
I
of them.
would.
No, I'm
I
sorry.
agree.
Get them
It's
No,
get
I
kind of
get
to
them
the
from in front of them.
same.
See to it that
no,
they're not there,
Yeah.
no, I agree because
raise them with good black teachers, women and men, and they will do very well, because when you put those other people in front of them, they are there to, in my view, not support them, and some of their own internal prejudices and stuff that they bring to the table will
Absolutely.
will will adversely affect them. That's why it's very important we take over the education of our children.
no,
I
They
I
would
should
say
not
agree.
be.
also
They should
kind of
not be.
even to the
They should
same.
not be getting educated by savages and outsiders. I'm sorry, And no,
And,
I'm
and
not
you
sorry. I ain't sorry about that. But that's exactly what we need to be doing. We need to have good teachers, qualified teachers who are very good at what they do.
Yeah,
I would
And
say
that's
even
part of the
from
game as well.
and I'll even be a
hey,
little
yeah,
bit
I'm
more
gonna jump in.
specific.
Hey,
Uh,
oh,
well, let me just get this real quick point out, and
okay.
yeah, to be really specific, where I'm at here in Milwaukee, a few months earlier this year, I was speaking. I was invited out to do a special, to do a speech for a thing they do yearly here in Milwaukee called the Black Male Summit. So basically, they bring in brothers from various disciplines, stuff like that. You know, they come out for about 2 days and they're mentoring, they're talking, they're having seminars and talking with elementary, middle school black students, black males, and also high school. And so one, I spoke with an administrator from the MPS system, and essentially what he told me was that probably about half the population um, were of students were crack babies, and two, this a specific school district was classified, all the students were pretty much classified as special ed. So if anyone's not familiar, once you get put in that classification, they actually, the school districts get extra money for per student once you get in those classifications. And so, I just wanted to throw that in there just to kind of highlight, just sort of, I was dealing specifically with all black males, young black males, middle school, high school age. And so just to highlight just how important of an issue, especially given the focus of this is geared at black men, how we as Nagon was saying, we really need to take control of the education of our children, but specifically the black boys, because they are suffering disproportionately at a higher rate than any other group, bar none.
Yeah, Gabe, Gabe, you had something to say, brother?
Yeah, I was gonna kind of go towards the same point as it concerns kind of the Detroit public schooling system, kind of from a firsthand perspective, and how a lot of kind of that, because as I was coming up, there was this. I had pretty much all black female teachers, math, science, and all those classes. And as a young man, you're very rambunctious. You're kind of, you got a lot of energy, and that would be classified as by my teachers as a discipline issue. When rather it was more that I wasn't being challenged in the classroom, especially as it concerns math and science, which were like my passions, right? They were just giving you basic things. It wasn't until I had got into a program, and this is kind of going to elaborate a little bit more on this, is with there was a supplemental program called the Wayne State Math Corps, which is pretty much a math summer camp in the city of Detroit by a university that was just hosting it, like in the downtown Detroit math summer camp. And you wouldn't think a lot of African American or just students in general would gravitate towards this program, but it was an absolutely amazing program, which had made math interactive, fun, and it was just like amazing. Like we learned how to play chess, we played Mancala, we did specific logic, mathematical logic games, and it was just a really valuable experience that really contributed to me majoring in electrical engineering during my undergrad. And it's just kind of to that same point. It's not the Detroit public school system, or the public school system is not enough, is what I'm saying. Pretty much that I had to go to a whole summer camp in order to really be able to foster that desire for math and science that contributed to my future. So yeah, I would like to add to those points that already been mentioned.
One of my teachers who was a mentor to me, and I understand my experience is not the common experience. So I would have to tend to largely agree with what Nagon just said, because I had a very positive experience, but my experience was, it's not the common experience. It's not typical. I don't think it's wise to make a plan based on atypical results. So with that said, because I largely agree with what Nagon said, one of my teachers who was a mentor of mine said, "Think small, be small. If you want to be big, you have to think big." So I think that it is incumbent upon many black parents that they have to first adjust and change their mindset so that they can then pass that on to their children. and you have to put your children first. So if your priority is running around in the hottest, flashiest car in the hottest, flashiest clothes to the detriment of your children, then all you are doing is you are perpetuating whatever negative situations that you are, in fact, complaining about, because it is incumbent upon you to be the change that you want to see. So, how are your children going to then continue and carry on that legacy if the legacy that you're creating for your children is one of mediocrity? So I think that that is something that is not talked about, not looked at. That, in my personal opinion, is something that largely needs to be reassessed. Because if it's the difference between, even though it's throwing money away, but if it's the difference between renting and buying a new house and sending your child to a private school for a better education, put it towards the child's education. Or if you own a home, and if it's you want to get rid of your 3-year-old, 4-year-old car because you want the hottest Beamer or the hottest Benz or the hottest Lex, save that money, put it towards your children's education. That is a much wiser investment, in my personal opinion.
I
Go
agree.
ahead, Dr. Phoenix.
Yeah, I agree. I remember when I was growing up, um, I participated in a science fair starting in first grade. And my project, I worked specifically, if I didn't do nursing, my first love was actually engineering. It was electrical engineering specifically. So I did projects related on series and parallel circuits. And by the time I was 10, I actually started playing tennis with the University of Chicago, their tennis team. So I actually did a summer. My mother had got me into this summer program at the University of Chicago, and I started playing tennis around, yeah, it was around 10, 11, something like that. And so I started playing tennis. So again, just having that ability for, especially for young Black males to have that outlet where that, where they can be challenged, you know, where and also too where the parents have to be willing to sacrifice. And this is something that I routinely see, man, because I'm in ICU, but I do rotations sometimes in the ER. And man, I can tell you right now, brother, I done seen some folks come through the ER, can't pay a $10 copay, but they dress to the nines, Jordans, Pelly jackets, $200 jeans, whatever, but can't pay a $10 copay. And I'm sitting here with other physicians and nurses, and everybody just cracking jokes at these folks. And I'm just sitting here looking like, my God.
Damn.
You know,
But
and
maybe they pay
and
with
and,
with beta
Beta milk
male
coins.
coins.
Yeah.
and again, and this is the problem, and this inability for Black people to sacrifice for the next generation is
Oh,
something that that is a major issue. Shifting away from these attitudes where it's about what I want and what I can get right now, towards I need to be thinking about the next couple of generations after I'm gone. And so, routinely, this is what we see, and I regularly work with a lot of immigrants, I hear these stories all the time. Parents came, and I'm not saying Black folks, we have very specific issues and needs. However, some of the things that are within our control, we don't exercise that control.
All right, let me get to this next article. This one is from PBS. Black families increasingly choose to homeschool kids. And at least in the last 15 years, the number, let me expand this. In the last 15 years, the number of black children in homeschool was doubled from 103,000 to about 220,000. Black parents cite a number of reasons for homeschooling children, including concern over peer pressure and drugs at school. But increasingly, they are also citing school-related racism as a reason to keep students at home. NewsHour
oh,
Weekend.
keep it rolling. Roll them. Keep it rolling. Damn.
One of the most important choices a parent or guardian makes is where to send a child to school, and an increasing number are deciding not to send them at all, instead educating them at home. One segment of this growing movement, African Americans, are looking to provide their children the history and social context they can't be found in public schools. At the Atlanta home of 19th century writer Joel Chandler Harris, best known for his Uncle Remus African American folktales, Akbar Imhotep is keeping alive the oral tradition that inspired Chandler's book. Akbar, listen to the words and help them grow. Yvette, this is this is part of a homeschooling support network in Cobb County, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. Amber, this is not just any old house. It was founded in 2016 by Amber Johnson, a business owner, wife, and mother of four. She wanted to fill a need she saw for her daughters and for a burgeoning demographic in the homeschooling movement, African Americans. Johnson's group, which began with two families less than 2 years ago, has grown to 66 families. I'm still shocked about it. It reminds me when when I was like growing up in the 80s, there was this cartoon called Thundercats, and when they needed to be called to action, they would say Thundercats, 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 ho! And this light would go up in the sky, and other Thundercats would see it, and that's what I feel like. I feel like I put a beacon light up in the sky in Cobb County, thinking that a few sprinkles of families might see it, and I've been overwhelmed by the response. Across the nation, as many as 202,000 black children are being homeschooled, up from about 105,000 in 2003. While white Americans still make up a majority of the 1.7 million homeschoolers, the percentage of African Americans is growing fast. They cite some of the same reasons for abandoning traditional schools that the larger homeschooling community does. Negative school environments, including peer pressure, dissatisfaction with academics, and a desire to provide religious instruction. But it wasn't just the family's faith that made the Johnsons look for alternatives. They worried about the quality of the schools in their area. I started realizing that maybe we hadn't come as far along in race relations in the country as I thought we did or we thought we had. That there seemed to be a lot of messed up stuff brewing underneath, and I was feeling very much like a mama bear. Like, hey, I don't know what exactly what's going on, uh, what's going down here, what's going down here, but I'm not willing to sacrifice my children, my child, as I try to figure this out. The decision to educate was strengthened in 2014 when Johnston found out she was having first of her two boys. She was initially excited, and my very second thought was, great. Now I'm a mother of America's most hated. When I'm and what I'm going to do with that. When I look at my little boys, I just see beauty in the thought of putting them in an environment where one day they would be looked upon potentially and very likely as being less than, less smart, less deserving, less safe, and I just hear less, 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 and less. Cheryl Field Smith, a professor of education at the University of Georgia, has heard from lots of parents like Amber Johnson. In 2009, she published a study about black homeschoolers. She found the vast majority cite perceptions of or experiences with racism in public and private schools as a reason for homeschooling. The research shows us that we have disciplined disproportionality where black males are suspended two times more than their other counterparts. So that's not by accident. I think that's racism. I think just that's this is poorly written. Prejudice and assumptions that we're making about children. Judy Sardin, who lives just outside of Atlanta, knows these kinds of assumptions all too well. Sardin and her husband, an architect, both went to public schools. She was a, she was an attorney making six figures when she decided to quit her job to teach her two kids, 10-year-old Aiden and 9-year-old Haley. Kind of hard to imagine that person quitting their fancy corporate job and going home to be with their children. It was 2012. Sarden says the then four-year-old Aiden had a tough year with one teacher in his Montessori class. Interesting. My son was reading at the time. He was young, but he was reading. And the other teachers had pushed him. Anything he showed in aptitude for, they had pushed him and helped him to develop it in a way that he enjoyed. But this teacher who had come from the public schools didn't, and her. I begged her to. You know, I sent her books to school to the school he was reading, and asked her to encourage him and have him read to her, and she never did. There was no exception. There was no expectation that he should be able to read, and I could see kind of the writing on the wall. I could see where we were going with his education. With him regressing the way he did that one year, it was drastic and it was heartbreaking. Keeping her kids home, Sarden says she was able to shape their curriculum. That includes history lessons they won't get in public school. Depending on what state you're in, you learn about African enslavement in the Americas, or you don't learn about it at all. And basically, that is the history that all kids, black and white, learn about black people. So we don't just learn about the Greek and Roman empires. We learn about African civilization. We learn about what's going on in the Americas. We get to learn about what's going on pretty much on every continent throughout history. So that by the time we get to modern times, we get to African enslavement in the Americas. We've studied 4,000 and 5,000 years of world history, but especially African history. So that for my children, their history didn't just start 300 years ago here in the Americas. Their history started back in Africa. We go hard on African American history and culture, and again, that's a reflection of just what I didn't know. You know, I didn't know much about Africa. I thought Africa was a country. So much for ADOS. Retired Air Force veteran Shiva Quinn lives in rural Byron, Georgia. She has been homeschooling her two daughters, 7-year-olds Zaria and 6-year-old Naya, for the past 4 years. Actually, I'm not going to read the rest of this. This is just banter going back and forth, but
Yeah.
I think we get the gist of what's going on.
Well, yeah. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead. I was going to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, we get the gist of what's going on, and we see that there's a power struggle in the public school system as well as at home as well.
Yeah, I think that's key. Like I said, I was, as I said, I mentioned I was very aware of this. I said earlier on this hangout, that a lot of black kids are being homeschooled more so now than ever. We were talking about the Montessori school system, but I said a lot of black kids are being homeschooled more and more every day. The smarter the parents, the more they're looking to do that. As I said, and how we see it, don't put these kids in front of these savages. Oh, I'm sorry. We talk about racism. These a lot of these white, they don't have an interest in seeing your kids do better than theirs in many respects. They bring a lot of racism in there. They're savages. They don't want you to do well. Many of them do not. Sorry to call it out, but that's just a hardcore fact. And you have to be mentored and taught by those who have some kind of caring for you. These other people do not. They don't. At the end of the day, I'm not pushing racism or anything else like that. It's just the reality. And these kids are feeling it, and these parents are seeing it, and that is having a tremendous effect on young black boys. But there's one young black boy, that black kid who I think he was an American kid, got accepted to I think 7, because he had some African kids who had, but it was the latest kid who was I think he got accepted to 7 of the top Ivy League schools. He was homeschooled. And he was on a television program, in fact, and one of the white uh, commentators were like, "Yeah, well, maybe he got some affirmative action or something." They were trying to call it an affirmative action thing, and it wasn't. He had academic scholarships because his grades were that high, and it was looked at to see even the commentators were upset by this, hating on him. So the hater rate out there is high. These people don't want to see you, on the whole, do very well. They're savages, and I don't believe that your kid should be in front of them. I'm sorry to say it. I know there'll be those who will hold this against me. I don't care. That is exactly what we have to do. We have to take charge of our children's education. So if you're not going to build your own schools, then you better build your own school in your own home. And if you can get other teachers and others to help you in some of the subject matter that you may not be strong in, to educate your kids and give them the kind of education that they should have, we can do it. It's made easier today now because we have, let's just say, the Khan Academy. Okay, Sal Khan. Everybody may know about that whole that program, which I like a great deal. There are others out there, but just for instance, for that one, you can get your kids basically an Ivy League education. Right up to Ivy League school online. You don't have to go to these schools and put yourself in front of these savages and deal with the craziness that they've got waiting for many of you. We don't have to expose ourselves to that. And the more black parents are waking up and seeing exactly how bad a lot of this is. And there's some horror stories out there with kids being put on drugs, other kids being literally suspended for bull crap, and just savagery, man. I mean, so we have to take care of ourselves, and no one else is going to do that but us. And I think that's very key. I'm very aware of that. I am very glad that this is brought up here tonight, because this is something that we have to address, and we're going to continue to address over the years. But very important, we take charge of our kids' education. Very important that parents are deeply involved in it, because if we're not, no one else is going to really help you. And I can just tell you, you can go to these white schools and think, I'm going to get the best. Some are going to do well, no question about it. But some are going to run into some unfair shakes, and I'm at this stage of the game and at this period of our existence here in this country. I no longer find that acceptable. Not that I ever did, but it certainly is less acceptable now than ever. And you don't have to deal with that, and let's see that we don't, and let's keep this kind of information out there. But anyway, Mike, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to let Dr. Phoenix jump in.
I agree with everything Nagon just said. Again, and again, like I said, I grew up in Chicago, so the teacher unions are big, specifically the Teach for America. And, as Nagon had pointed out, you have these white female teachers, 90+% of teachers are white women. And again, they, when they're exposed to young black boys, typically they will come to the parents and say something to the effect of, well, your child seems to be a little anxious in class, he seems to be a little jumpy, a little edgy, I think he has ADHD and he needs to be evaluated, and I'm kind of going into a realm here where, you guys are familiar with Umar Johnson. He talks a lot about this. But again, being that I'm a nurse and I've been in the school system, so I have seen this. And one of the things that happens is that, a lot of parents don't understand that, a teacher is just that, a teacher. They're not a certified health professional. They're not a certified psychologist. They're not certified to administer any psychological test or anything of that nature. They are there for one purpose and one purpose only, to teach your child. And again, they're all there to just pay off their loans. Pretty much it. They work in one of these inner city schools. They're only there to get their loans paid off. You do a few years there, they get their loans paid off. They move to some, rich suburban white school district, and, you never see them again. But again, it is is imperative that that as Black men we take control of what happens with the education of our children, specifically our boys. And I cannot stress this enough because, you know, to for us to go into the 21st century and to be better prepared to function as Black men, we have to be looking at things on a global scale. When I was coming up, we didn't think of things globally when I was coming up, but now because of these significant advances in internet technology and stuff like that, the smartphone revolution of the past decade, the world is at your fingertips. And as Black men, in order for us to survive in the 21st century, we need to be prepared to deal with things at a global level. And so, again, that starts by setting that foundation from birth to about 5 years old. But I'm going to be specific and just say it needs to be from cradle to grave. And I'll leave it at that.
Well said.
Paul Bryant.
Well, let me first speak on my experience. My mom sent me to what was then in the 70s and 80s the best school district in New York City. So I went to what were the best public schools in the entire country at that time. Um, I did not know it at the time, but I had one teacher from when I was in second or third grade, who made my life a living hell, and that was the first time in my life where I heard that term prejudice and racism. I heard that from that's how my father just described it. May he rest in peace. So through elementary school, junior high school, and high school, um, I s- I saw every side of the game. I saw teachers and mentors who went out of their way to help me. I also saw teachers who were against me and against others who happened to look like me, and others who helped me. So seeing both sides of the coin, um, I don't. Again, that's what I said. My experience was atypical, so I naturally tend to lean towards that. However, that's not typical. It's also not the reality for most Black people in America. So, being cognizant of that, I think there is a lot of truth in what Nagone says. Um, he's very fiery when he says it, but again, I think there is tremendous truth and facts in what he says. Um, I think that the mindset needs to change, education needs to be stressed, and that parents need to be much more involved in their children's futures, and then look towards their own schooling methods. Uh, Again, owing to my experience, one of the caveats I would add is that do not shy away from the exposure to multiculturalism and other histories and art forms, given to the nature of the world that we do live in. But listen, I cannot in any way, shape, form, or matter disagree with anything that Nagone said. I really can't because I have to stress that was not my reality. That's not how I grew up. But I did see a lot of that dark side that he spoke on. So even under the best conditions, which I like to think that I had growing up, as far as my upbringing and my schooling, some of those things that Nagone spoke about, that was still there. It just was. So whether you choose or whether you have the resources and wherewithal to do what my parents did and to do what I did with my child, and whether you do or you don't, you have to take control of your child's education. All right, whether you're at the upper end of the socioeconomic strata, you're in the middle, or you're at the bottom, you have to take control of your child's education. No matter where you send your child to, you cannot just send them and just leave it to the school. You are the one in control of your children's education. not the school, not the teachers.
And I wanted to say this. I experienced this myself. I went to a prep school in high school, and I remember I was in physics class, and I was taking a physics class, and my physics teacher, Mrs. Riker, big German-esque, woman with stinky underarms, was my physics teacher, and I remember we were just getting into kind of free body diagrams and and getting into some of the earliest stuff that we were getting into physics at the time. And I was making a few mistakes, and I remember we had one or two quizzes, and I didn't do as well, and I was messing up a little bit, and she's like, the kids in this class are the sharpest kids. They're the sharpest kids. These are the sharpest kids in the school. And Carl, maybe you shouldn't be in this class. Maybe you should. I was like, what? Maybe you shouldn't be in this class. These are the sharpest kids. And she was telling me I wasn't. She was trying to tell me I wasn't sharp. This big funky ass white broad sitting over here telling me that I wasn't sharp. Big funky ass gray broad. All right. So I'm sitting there saying, what is this? And my father, Jeffrey Washington, who went to Syracuse, he came back, during break, and he was a brilliant kid in mathematics and science, and he sat down and started tutoring me, and then he started. That's when I started to really understand how to simplify certain levels of subject matter. Stryker never sat down and wanted to take a minute or even speak to me about how to get past. She was quickly there to tell me, with her big funky gray ass, you ain't sharp enough to get this. And Jeff sat down. His brother had a big fro, had one of Michael Jackson fros and shit, and was a sharp dude. And sat down and got my mind right, got me right for that. And then I started to do well in the class. Miss Riker didn't want to speak to me a lot of times. This is just kind of how she was. Talk to the other kids, didn't really want to speak to me about that. But then sometimes we would have some difficult equations in the class, and she'd call me out just to see if I had any if I had the answers to some of the stuff, and I did. And I would start to do fairly well. And then she realized she was almost resentful that I was coming off. She was almost resentful about that. And I experienced this in the 12th grade. So when I saw that, I said, oh, shit, look at this. Big funky ass grade brought up an egg coming out against me. Against me. I experienced this myself in a prep school. My parents were paying damn near $10,000 a year then. They were paying more for that school than they paid for me going to Syracuse. All right. Can't make this shit up. And Get seen this in many other cases. Sort of happened in the high school with my son, and I had to climb up in some asses like a Brazilian fawn to get to some of the folks as well up in there. So I've experienced this stuff. I've seen it on my own. So that's why I sit down and say, you can't trust these people. And not all of them are going to be bad, because the language classes that I was in, 2 Italian women, all right, Miss Mascari and Miss Arquet, all right, those ladies, they were from, they had a very heavy Italian background. They came here, they understood they were discriminated against. They saw me in a language class, saw me getting down, and they were down with me. So they looked out. They did look out. And Miss Arquet was really great, but I give really Miss Mascari really a lot of credit for getting me butter laid in the Espanol. Because she was brilliant, and she was always encouraging me. Carlos, she said, Carlos, you really have a great aptitude for this. You need to study. Great aptitude for this. She pushed me. So, but these were Italian women, who pushed me. But a lot of these other, upfront white folks, they kind of weren't down. They were a little bit against it. And these white women are a problem. They are a problem. I'm sorry to say it. I know I don't want to sound like a racist. I'm just going on what my experience is and what a lot of these other black people are experiencing around the country, enterprise-wide. And I'll just leave it at that. So I've experienced this firsthand.
I agree with that.
Gentlemen, really quick, I am going to jump off, get a little early morning cycling, hit the gym, and then finally get a little bit of sleep later. So it's been a pleasure as always.
Well, auf Wiedersehen.
Auf
All right,
Wiedersehen,
Paul.
auf,
Talk to you, brother.
auf Wiedersehen,
All
my
right,
brother.
Paul.
All right. Have a good night.
Remember, take
All right.
care. All right, be safe.
Yeah. I agree with everything the Gong just said. I would say it's even worse once you get to a collegiate level. I can specifically speak to that. I had a clinical professor who damn near failed me just because she didn't like me. And this was a white woman. And so, I mean, it didn't matter how good I did, then, I mean, she would intentionally, we would do after our clinicals, we'll do a post-clinical meeting and we'll go over the cases for the day. And, she'll just intentionally call on me. She'll just throw some random question out there and then she'll intentionally call on me and, try to, throw me off my cues, throw me off, just throw me off my feet or whatever, and I will always know the answer. But again, she also didn't know that I spent 6 years, almost 6 years as a medic in the U.S. Army, and I was in Fort Drum, New York. So and I had been deployed. So I came with a significant, medical background prior to me going to nursing school. But and I also had I took a sociology class where I had a TA that gave me a B on a paper, and when I asked him about the paper, he couldn't tell me nothing that was grammatically wrong with the paper. He just gave me a B because he didn't like the context of my paper because I talked about white supremacy in the paper, and it was about the race riots in Milwaukee. But he didn't like the idea that I talked about how the working class white people were really the enemies of black folks, even though they try to pass them off as sort of the allies to black people. And so, that's a story for another day. But, so I can speak personally to, the experience that Nagon had, as in high school, but I had it at a collegiate level. Fortunately, when I was going through elementary and high school, all my teachers were black in Chicago, but, can't really say that so much today. That's not really the case today in Chicago. But yeah, when I was in high school and stuff like that, all my teachers were black: physics, chemistry, biology, whatever. And so, and I hear this a lot for students, and I think this is really important given the STEM focus of this channel and how I spend, I personally tutor students in biology and anatomy, physiology, and chemistry and biochemistry. And so I routinely hear this from black students who talk about, yeah, the professors don't go out their way to help you like they help the white students, and some of the real craziness that happens, at the PWIs. And although I'm not the biggest fan of HBCUs, but I do think the HBCUs do benefit students better in terms of just the general culture and atmosphere that they're in, and that's probably a bit more focused at fostering those relationships between professor and student. So
Let me get to this last article, and then we can give our closing thoughts. This one is from the Haitian Times. Haitian tablet company uses tech and AI to expand education. Surtab's uh, Didart Mousset and video game developer Remy Sertil speak to the Haitian Times during the third annual Tech Summit tablet manufacturing company, about the tablet manufacturing company and how they are using AI to expand teaching opportunities for Haiti's youth. So essentially, this company in Haiti, Surtab, I think that's how it's pronounced, are using artificial intelligence and machine learning as well as augmented reality, which is AR, to actually teach kids. And this tablet that they have has a whole entire curriculum or multiple curriculums embedded into it from an application standpoint. And what they've been able to do is leverage all of the technology that's in the tablet, uh, for learning purposes. So they can point the tablet at certain items on a table and use the camera to decipher what the item is. When you click on the item or the object, it actually gives context to what that item is. Um, if you keep watching the video, I should actually expand it out. In this part of the video, you can actually see where there's these objects on the table with pictures of different animals, and what they've been able to do is hover the camera over the picture, and it would identify the object, the picture, with the intended object. So it's like a on a table it had a picture of a pig, um, and then it identifies that item as it is to the student. So and it gives it context. So this tablet that they've created is an all-in-one package, something that hasn't really been seen before outside of America. Any of you gentlemen have any thoughts on this?
Um, I can tell you, I've been in school districts where kids are using nothing but MacBooks and giving iPads. Me personally, at the collegiate level, we had we had a couple apps that we used that would allow us to uh, we can have had a layout of the human body, and we can we can touch in specific areas of the body, and it would give us certain pathophysiologies that were involved with those specific areas or organs and organ systems. And I've been in a couple of clinical environments where we were given tablets where and stuff like that. And so yeah, so I mean, this is one of these areas where IT, tech in general is being used to streamline education, but also enhance it. So, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, sorry if it's a little loud. I'm in the car. I had to step out and go to the grocery store. But to kind of follow up on Dr. Phoenix's point, this is the direction in which education is going. Learning will be more interactive. It'll start to incorporate, type like VR type technologies, augmented reality type technologies, and as well as artificial intelligence. And the thing about it is that we think of artificial intelligence as just sort of like a human replacement, if you will. But artificial intelligence will actually be used to basically foster new learning methods. So these will produce new ways of learning, and as a result, new ways of thinking. So I really would like to just see this more prevalent in the hands, particularly of young black males. Because what's been touched on earlier in this discussion here, largely with once young black males get to like age 6, 7, 8 years old, next thing you know, they're being told that they have ADHD, and they're being put on Ritalin and all kind of stuff. And really, it has nothing to do with that, and it has more to do with the fact that they just have an active mind and it needs to be engaged. So I think these types of learning tools are going to be key in engaging a naturally active and inquisitive mind.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think this is a step in the right direction, because it's delivering the content necessary to build upon this homeschooling sort of approach, right? If we're talking about homeschooling black kids, if we're talking about private schooling black children, this is how you're going to get started. They've already put everything that you need into a tablet. The only thing you have to do is get the classroom together. We talked about this before. I think Ulysses, myself, and maybe Young Grizzly. You
Yep.
taking
Yep.
taking shipping containers, converting them into classrooms, and then dropping those things, dropping those suckers into villages all across the continent in Latin America, or even doing the same thing in some of these urban cities where there's vacant parcels available that are being underutilized or not being utilized at all, and actually spinning up startup schools, um, within your local neighborhood. I would argue that churches, as an institution, black churches, Christian churches, should be actually leveraged for this very purpose. I don't understand why an institution that's only being heavily used on Sunday for a few hours is being underutilized for the rest of the week, and no one's using it,
Mike,
past its intended purpose.
Real talk,
Mike,
dude. Real talk.
hey, Mike, that's how it used to be. It used to be that way. It used to be.
Yeah, coming out of slavery.
That's where you learn it. That's what it used to be. We did all this stuff before. We've gotten away from it. I mean, the public school system is something that black people helped to create. I mean, and then it's been used more or less against us because I think early on it was somewhat successful and folks kind of didn't like it. I don't know how else to really break it down, but we've always been into education here in this country, but we've had a lot of obstacles against us. But anyway, go ahead, Ulysses. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Ulysses?
No. You guys go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. I mean,
I think.
What's that, Mike?
No, I was just about to say. I think Ulysses might be eating grapes around the store and not paying for it.
You know what, dude? You got jokes.
No, this is exactly a game changer, right? So now people want to talk about buying black, right? There's your platform right there. Everybody always wants to talk about what this educated lame looks like. He looks like Steve Urkel. He looks like Carlton Banks. Those guys in that video did not look like either one of these stereotypes that people like to hold on to in black YouTube and black social media. Look like regular brothers to me. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think it's just a narrative that's run on black YouTube. I think this is just popular here, but it's not. It's not entirely accurate.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just nothing more than hyperbole for black YouTube.
Mm-hmm. I think this Surtab, which is a tablet, I think this is a game changer. I think that need to look more into something like this, and actually we should be building our curriculums in open source for as an open source project for for homeschooling, right? If you're going to homeschool your kids, I mean, it's probably a whole lot of work for you to go out and do all the research. I think somebody should already do the research in the open source market or the open source industry and actually allow that stuff to be downloaded to a tablet or to actually order these tablets and have it up and running in a matter of minutes, right? I should be able to either buy the tablet from a website or go down to a local Best Buy and buy an off-brand or a name brand tablet, Lenovo, Motorola or whatever it is, and actually load that application up and have that whole entire curriculum inside that tablet and be right in the house, connected to your big flat screen TV and have these learning curriculums all available, for pennies on the dollar.
Can I add something to that? Because that actually reminds me of something. So, so some of the stuff I did when I was in nursing school, for example, we actually had classrooms that were interactive, and so we had like tablets, computer monitors, and so it was all touchscreen and stuff like that. And so we kind of set in groups and tables, and so each table had about 5 or 6 computers with tablets, touchscreens. And then there was like multiple, really large 70-inch multiple monitors around these lecture halls. And so what we would do is that we can draw stuff or, write on the tablets and monitors, and the things will appear on the big monitors or whatever and around the lecture, around the classroom. And so, this is one of the areas where you're really seeing technology is being used to streamline and enhance education, is specifically in medicine, in nursing, and health professions in general. Because I mean, this is a big area where you're really seeing the impact of technology is in these areas. And again, especially folks who are going to some of the more better funded schools and programs, you're seeing this deployment of this technology at this level. And so, again, it's being used to not only streamline, but also enhance the learning of students. So.
Dope. Yeah, definitely dope. My closing thoughts is what I said earlier. I think more open source development needs to take place on this on that very concept, and homeschooling should not be frowned upon. I think that there may be an option here if you think that public schooling is a failure. Um, at best, I think we can do this for less than a couple of grand. Shouldn't take much. I mean, the scholars have already done the work, in the conscious community. So all you got to do is transfer uh, a lot of that research into learning material and actually get some content creators. I mean, imagine if we leverage the manosphere for a learning perspective, where they can open up a playlist and actually click on a video and actually learn from those videos, man.
Mike, that's not entertaining though.
That's what.
So that's not entertaining though. They wouldn't find that entertaining.
Oh, sorry, I stepped away for a second. I'm sorry.
I mean, again, I agree. I said I agree. I mean, these things in general are not sexy. They're not appealing. They're not entertaining. You don't get views off of trying to, implement a 21st century education curriculum. You just don't. You know, and unfortunately, the folks that most benefit from it, i.e., Black men, aren't leading this.
Hey, real quick, I did want to read. There's a comment in the chat from Elise. I think that's what it is. Hello, all. I wish I would have caught this stream from the beginning. I went to a Montessori school for my pre-K through third grade schooling. Very great experience. I will restream this. Awesome.
Yeah, dope. All right. Well, if you have not already hit the like button, just hit the like button, please, and share the video if possible. And then we'll be back for Space and Technology tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So thank you all for joining us and have a good night.
All right, have a